Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Why I Love Flagler County, your local podcast spotlighting local businesses and local residents on what they love about being a part of Flagler County. So today I'm super excited to have my guest Kathryn with us today. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Kathryn. I'm really excited for this.
Thank you for having me, Macy.
Of course. Well, Kathryn and I met not too long ago, just a few days ago, at the Autism Festival over in Town Center, held by Erica Flores, who was also a guest on the podcast. She had an amazing event, an amazing turnout, and I was just getting to know some of the booths, and Kathryn had a really cute booth, and I stopped by and we got to chatting, and I really love what she does. So I'll let her explain a little bit more on that because I'm sure she's better at it than I am. But Kathryn, why don't we kind of get started? You can tell me just a little bit on finding Flagler County and how has that been for you?
Sure. Well, first of all, Macy, it was wonderful meeting you at the Vincent's Clubhouse Autism Resource Fair. It was a really vibrant event. I saw so many wonderful families, like just loving the beautiful weather, all of the fun activities, and learning more about autism spectrum. So I've been in the autism services since 2005. I was first attracted to working with children with autism because I have a family member on the spectrum, and this family member did really well in his life. He's he's got a degree, he's got a job that he loves, he's married, he's got his own son, and oftentimes, when I'd be working with families with children on the spectrum, there's so many unknowns when the child is young, age 3, 4. They're told all these scary things about limitations for people with autism. And I'd go in there and say, let's see the opportunities, let's see the gifts. And so that's the real thrust behind my business idea, the Joy Advantage. So I originally come from New York, went to school in Miami, and then spent most of my professional career out in Los Angeles. So in Los Angeles, I was a lead corporate trainer for Change in Trajectory. I was regional clinical director for Easter Seals of Southern California. And then my personal life took a turn for the worse. So I had health issues and other personal things going on. So I decided to move to Florida because my mom is here. And just like a lot of young professionals going through life changes, they go where family is. And so my family had relocated here to Palm Coast. My mom had spent years of research looking for the perfect retirement community. And here we got here, and it's full of like vibrant community and thriving families and all these new schools and opportunities and all these wonderful recreation opportunities. And I kind of looked around and was like, good work, mom. Like, she really hit it on the nail on the head because we had our my family had always been gravitating towards Florida. I lived here when I was very young, and then my family moved back to New York. After that, I was educated at University of Miami. My brother, that I mentioned earlier, went to Florida Atlantic University. So our family kept, we just couldn't keep away from Florida, and so that's where I went when things were really getting tough. The tough went to Florida.
I completely understand. It's so funny to hearing the stories of people kind of finding Palm Coast because I feel like if you weren't born in this area, or maybe even people who were born in this area, believe it or not, I've talked to a lot of people who lived in Jacksonville or they lived in Daytona, and they never stopped in Palm Coast. Like they would drive up and down 95, they would see the exit, and they would just keep on driving. And it was like I
Really?
think two or three people told me the same thing, like within a week too. It was the funniest thing ever. And like, yeah, I lived here in Florida all my life, but I never knew Palm Coast existed. But regardless, my mom was kind of similar in hers, is she was kind of just going up the map and researching different communities and different places to live, and that's how we found Palm Coast. So I just think that's why I love that question. People have their different ways of finding. I feel like you have to find it. It's not like I've always wanted to move to Palm Coast. It's like, oh, I kind of stumbled upon it on the map or on a Google search or something like that, which I find is really cool. Yeah, and you talked a little bit about the Joy Advantage, which I absolutely love the name, and I really enjoy the positive spin on it, especially because when you're so young and you have these things that some other kids aren't dealing with, you feel like you're at that disadvantage, right? and it's hard for you to keep going at any age. If any of us ever feel disencouraged at any age, it's really easy for us to give up. So it's really great you're able to give that positive spin. So then for you to talk a little bit on what is it that you're helping families with and what kind of started the founding of this company, like the full steam ahead, like I'm gonna go all in, and really commit for it.
Well, of course, the pandemic changed everything for everybody, and the new model of um, being able to promote yourself as an independent expert really just exploded over the pandemic. So it made a lot of sense for me to start branching out independently. A lot of the barriers that I faced in my career was some of the best, most effective strategies really weren't covered by insurance.
Mm.
So the one of the strategies that I use that has a lot of research behind it is the parent as therapist model. So what I do through my parent coaching, through my sessions with working with families together, is to transfer some of the therapeutic skills to the parents. And so these therapeutic skills include looking for natural opportunities to teach a skill. If you know the skill that you're looking to encourage, then the child can be in that therapeutic environment where they're encouraged to practice the skill. And it's not so much pressure as like you only have 30 minutes to force this child to do the skill or else insurance won't pay for it. So I think that it really takes the pressure off the children in order to have more opportunities to practice a new skill and to practice it under like less stressful environments.
Yeah, I don't know about even when you're an adult, you can't learn things that quickly in like 30 minutes, even an hour. It takes a lot of sessions and it takes the whole part of building a skill and building a habit is that continued repetition over time, is continuing to work at it, right? Like I used to be a figure skater, where I used to live in Michigan. And, I was skating for 15 years and I'm still not the best. But it was really only through continuing to come back, and that was something I learned when I was a kid because I was like, "I don't wanna practice, I'll be fine." And
Hmm.
then you don't practice, and then you're not fine, and then you're like,
Yep.
"Everyone was right, you do have to continue to show up and practice and do the things that you're not good at." So that's a really big thing. What are some of the skills that you help, children with and families?
Sure. The biggest thing is emotional regulation because a lot of the children that I work with are neurodivergent in some ways. So if we're talking about autism, if we're talking about ADHD, if we're talking about childhood anxiety, or sometimes there's like a child doesn't neatly fit into any of those one categories because there's some overlap. I also really, really love working with the population that's gifted plus or dually exceptional, where there's some form of neurodivergence, but there's also high intellect. And these people tend to really slip through the cracks because the assumption is that they're smart enough to work around whatever problem they have. But that's not how the brain works.
Right.
So the brain works in a way where you could have these splinter skills. You could have these things that the person as an individual has extreme talent, but that doesn't mean that they're good at everything. And so that can be where we have opportunities for growth. So emotional regulation is one of the big ones that I work on. So sometimes even just feeling your feelings and acknowledging them, that can be hard for people with neurodivergence because there's a lot of information that they're processing. Neurodivergent brains process information differently, and it's really unique to the individual. So no two people with autism are going to process the same. No two people with anxiety or ADHD are going to process the same. So we have to take a look at the individual, how they're processing the world around them, um, understanding their feelings, finding the words and language to connect with their feelings so that they can be self advocates. I don't like it when this happens because it makes me feel this. I feel like I need to change my environment because this is what's bothering me in the environment. I feel really overwhelmed, and if I don't get a break soon, I'm going to start to cry. So, all of those things are bridging the gap for understanding. Oftentimes, people who, are not on these neurodivergent spectrums, we call allistic or non-divergent or just typical, all the
Right.
rest of us, it's hard to empathize because that subjective experience is so different. And I have my subjective experience, you have your subjective experience, but I feel that that bridge of communication is the number one skill that we've got to work on because we can be all like islands and all individuals. But if we don't understand each other, we're going to make false assumptions. We're going to make false assumptions like, oh, this person is being a brat, or this person is being manipulative, or this person is being lazy. And so we attach negative stigma to certain behaviors that we don't understand. So if we can have the regulation for emotions, the awareness of emotions, and then communication of emotions, that's the foundation for communication, for respect, for connection. And I think we all need more of that.
Oh, yeah, and I hope anyone who's listening, and even if you're not neurodivergent, like you were mentioning, neurotypical, which is typically what, if you're not divergent, I guess, is listening. But emotional regulation is something we all have to learn and go through. It's not something that is only
Absolutely.
put away for a certain type of group. Because I think even just for your run-of-the-mill person, putting labels to your emotions can still be hard. Allowing yourself to feel maybe disappointment or allowing yourself to be like, okay, I am disappointed with this outcome for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I have to learn to be okay with it. I mean, how do I work to move past it, right?
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to open that. And like you mentioned, there are so many times where I just get so overwhelmed and then like I have like a really good cry. Then afterwards, I'm like, oh, I'm all better. I'm okay.
Yeah. That
It's
relief.
just like, yeah, it's just something I need to get like the weight off of my shoulders really quickly, or I don't know, quickly, but it depends. So it's just being aware, like you mentioned, and it's so funny that we're talking about this because last night me and my friends were talking about something similar of constantly being able to put names to how we're feeling and how are we healthily navigating these emotions because we're all college students, college age students, we're all going through a very what people can call emotionally turbulent,
Yeah.
and discovering part of your life is like, I don't know who I am. How am I supposed to figure out how I am? And a lot of these emotions tend to come up. And if we're not able to confront them head on, they just build up, and then it
Hmm.
gets harder to label them because there's so many labels at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's a really important thing that everyone should learn. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're going out of your way to help those who have a little bit harder time than some of the other people as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. And
Yeah.
a lot of what I teach, I try to teach people to build a toolbox. So rather than saying like, you're broken, this is how you fix yourself, it's like, here's the pain point. Let's see what tools we can use to make this better.
Right.
And for example, like one of my favorite tools to use is called behavior momentum. And behavior momentum is kind of tricking your brain to want to do the thing. So let's say you've got an assignment you're procrastinating on. So, first of all, procrastination is all about emotional regulation and regulating the anxiety associated with the task. So the first thing you have to just do is just notice how your body feels, how your emotions feel when you think about the task you don't want to do. So let's just call that the thing you don't want to do. And it's important, and there's a due date, and you got to get it done. Use exercise, use walking outside, biking outside, going for a beach walk. And this is what I really love about Flagler County. It's got one of the highest number of bicycle trail miles in the whole country. I think at one point it was the highest in the country, but I'd have to
Wow.
check the stats on that. I love getting on my bicycle, and it's more than exercise. For me, it's emotional regulation. If I feel like I'm worried about something or something's like on repeat in my brain, if I want to take that tangled ball out of my brain and stretch it out and deal with the string like just 1 inch at a time, that's what a bicycle ride does for me. And so the strategy I teach is to find your preferred outdoor activity. For some people, it's going to be a beach walk. For some people, it's going to be walking around the block with their favorite music. For some people, it's going to be doing yoga in the backyard. For some people, it's going to be doing, a hike or rollerblading or running or whatever that favorite outdoor activity is. So you sandwich the non preferred task between the light exercise and some kind of goodie. Oftentimes we think like, oh, let me just do the thing, then I get a reward. That doesn't really work if you've got that block from the emotions.
Gotcha.
So the 20 minutes of light exercise outside, it decreases anxiety, it helps you emotionally regulate, get some oxygen to the brain, get some dopamine to the brain, and then after that exercise, it's almost like you've taken a pill, like for concentration, for mental stamina. Watch how much easier that tough thing that you don't want to do gets done
Yeah,
because you've gotten your brain in the right frame of mind. You've kind of tricked your brain into thinking, like, oh, this is just an easy thing that I'm just going to sail through because you're already in that forward momentum state. So that's
exactly.
how you use behavioral momentum to get you through a hard task. And then you
Yeah.
still get the goodie at the end.
Yeah, of course. Oh my gosh, I love that. No, because I was talking about this kind of a while ago. I had a guest on the podcast and we were talking about anxiety. And I've had anxiety since I was, I think I got it diagnosed when I was like 9 or 10, right? I was pretty young. And there are different like hacks kind of that I came up with myself that I found that I responded to better than others, right? And learning as I was getting older that, my family was right. I do need to go outside and I need to have that kind of light exercise of doing something outside, and it put me in a better state. I was like, it was one of those things where I'm like, my parents are right, man. But it was super helpful being able to physically remove myself from an area where I was feeling anxious, where I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I have all of these things I need to do. And then coming back with a fresher state of mind, it really helps. And like you said, it pushes you kind of through it. And then I still have something at the end of the day that I look forward to that I really enjoy. And it really helps me get through my day. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that's a really fun. I don't know if hack is the right word, but toolbox that you mentioned to kind of have in the backseat of your mind, like, okay, these are different ways that I can kind of, like you mentioned, to trick your brain a little bit because our brains are a little bit funny sometimes and we kind of need to do some exercises to get it to do the right thing that we need it to do. So
Yes.
with that being said, Kathryn, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a lot of your time. You shared a lot of really, really great tips that I hope a lot of people can learn a little bit from. If they're interested in learning more about you, about the Joy Advantage, what's the best way for them to reach out?
You can email me at thejoyadvantage@gmail.com. I also have an online website, www.thejoyadvantage.com, and you can book a session there.
Perfect. So I'll make sure I have those in the description so people can click and copy and paste just a little bit easier. Would definitely recommend learning a little bit more if this is something that I think a lot of people do need a little bit of help in, just someone to hold their hand and walk them through and be their little personal cheerleader. So, Kathryn, again, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. And to everyone
Thank
listening,
you.
I really appreciate you as well. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.